I gotta say, of literally every YouTuber I have ever seen in the decade plus that I've been using this website, I have never seen anyone worse than Cinema Virgin. I would consider the worst. He didn't get a single fucking thing right in that entire hour and a half of worthless garbage ass video. He literally stretched so far that he couldn't even manage to pluck a point that made any level of sense. The fact that you act like a little bitch when people insult you, when you insulted people in like every 5 minutes of your video, goes to show what a spineless loser you are, a complete tool. Don't tell people you have manic depression as a get out of jail free card, aside from it being just pathetic on a level that not even a child would go to. It's just really sad that you would use that after insulting people consistently. You can stop your pissy little snipes on Twitter acting like a 5-year-old, pretending like you have any say with your audience of 4 people who actually give a shit about your god-awful content. You make it a little difficult to sympathize with you.
How badly can you miss the point, my dude? Yeah, no, he's just been a prick now. He's just been a prick now. It's not just that he doesn't like the movies, it's the reason he says he doesn't like the movies, therefore they're bad. Or they're bad because he doesn't like them, and then he gives really terrible reasons.
Hey, this is an emergency. I need to see you. Now. Look, I need your help. If you really are who you say you are, and if you can really do what you say you can do, you're my only hope.
The fuck do you want?
You said that you control time.
Yes.
Then I need your help.
How?
Send me back.
Back where? To the hair salon?
Back in time.
Whoa, Rob, that's
big. I know.
Dude, this is bigger than anything we've ever dealt with before.
Please. I just need to check something.
Rob, going through time is dangerous business. The slightest change could alter the entire world's future.
I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't an emergency, okay? Just send me back to March the 6th, 2017.
That's an oddly specific date, but okay. But listen very carefully. If I do this, you cannot, under any circumstances, interact with anything. Even the slightest movement would trigger an irreparable break in the space-time continuum that could throw everything out of whack.
Okay, I promise.
Rob, I mean it. Don't touch anything.
President Vladimir Putin authorized a special military operation in Ukraine's Donbass region.
Don't sneeze.
Donald Trump wins the presidency.
Don't sit down.
Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Don't go to the toilet.
So it's Italy's European Championship, and once more tears after a penalty shootout for England.
Don't step on a bug.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades.
And finally, most importantly, do not, I repeat, do not interact with your past self.
Completely understand. So all in all, it is such an overrated trilogy. They're clearly gay, none of it makes sense, they do shit for no reason. Hi Rob. You gay?
What?
I mean, is it just me, or the way you're just standing there clearly looks like you want to fuck me in the ass? What? No, I'm you, but from the future. What? I'm from the year 2023. Are there flying cars? No, are you high? Whatever you do not post this review, man. Seriously, dude, you're gonna post this review and it's gonna go viral. Really? Not in the way you're thinking. You're gonna be humiliated and it's gonna destroy your entire YouTube channel. Virgins. People are gonna make memes about you. Your entire YouTube channel is gonna be completely destroyed. What, just because I don't like some films? Well, no, maybe it's because you got everything wrong. What? Look, you don't want to do this. And besides, Lord of the Rings is really good. Yeah, you're definitely gay. What? No, I just rewatched it. Look, how about we just forget about the review for now, okay? Let's just go home, and we can watch the films together. What? No, why would I do that? I'll give you next week's lottery numbers. Sure, fine. The Lord of the Rings was a worldwide phenomenon and remains so, which is incredibly impressive considering they were published as books nearly 70 years ago. Author J.R.R. Tolkien started out with a fantasy tale, The Hobbit, in 1937, but went on to write a trilogy of sequels adapting to the lore during World War II, though they wouldn't be published until 10 years after the fact. In 1969, Tolkien sold the rights to these stories to United Artists for around £100,000, supposedly to pay off a tax bill that he owed, though it's unclear whether that's entirely true or not. But this sum would be the equivalent of nearly £3 million today, as well as gaining 7.5% royalty from any future adaptations, which would continue to go to his estate once he'd pass away. In 1976, United Artists sold the majority of these rights to Solzant's company, though they did retain the world distribution rights to any further movie adaptations. Rankin and Bass managed to license the rights, and an animated TV special adapting The Hobbit was produced in 1977, followed by an adaptation of the third book, Return of the King, in 1980. However, in 1978, just a year after the first TV special was aired, an animated feature film adaptation of The Lord of the Rings was made. Although it earned decent money, fan and critical reception was mixed, and it didn't make nearly enough at the box office to warrant a sequel. A young Peter Jackson saw this film and liked the beginning, but found the rest far too confusing, and only went out to read the books to find out what the hell was going on. It wasn't until technology in Hollywood became so advanced with the likes of Jurassic Park and Star Wars that filmmaker Peter Jackson was actually given the means to adapt the books to live action in his homeland of New Zealand. Naturally, he wanted to produce one movie based on The Hobbit, but only two on Lord of the Rings, making a trilogy which would be shot simultaneously. However, the rights for The Hobbit was split between two studios, and Jackson wasn't able to adapt it, meaning that he would have to do The Lord of the Rings first, which led to the trilogy that revived the fantasy genre as we know it. 3 movies shot back to back that shattered records, brought nerds together, and completely took the world by storm. The story of Sauron, who uses the fire of Mordor to forge an evil ring that rules all the other rings, destroying all peace on the fantasy world of Middle-earth, and in turn bringing on the apocalypse. It ends up in the hands of a man named Smeagol, played by Andy Serkis, who gets corrupted by the ring's evil powers for many centuries, turning him into an insane CGI creature named Gollum. However, Gollum then loses the ring when a small hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, played by Ian Holm, finds it. The ring starts to also corrupt Bilbo, but his wizard friend Gandalf, played by Sir Ian McKellen, talks him into letting it go, before discovering the ring's origin and its true powers. It is then up to Bilbo's nephew Frodo, played by Elijah Wood, and his best friend Sam, played by Sean Astin, to travel to Mordor and destroy the ring the only way possible, where it was created in the fires of Mount Doom. When adapting from the novels, Peter Jackson naturally had to make some changes. He wanted Middle-earth to all look as accurate to the book's descriptions as possible, almost treating it like a real historical place, but he also needed to cut things out. The first book is 423 pages long, the second 352, and the third 416. But all 3 movies are 3 hours long or over, and also were given an extended cut nearing 4 hours apiece. Jackson didn't only cut things out of the book, but he added things in to help with pacing, character development, and to just add to the overall viewing experience. But this didn't sit well with everyone, mainly J.R.R. Tolkien's own son Christopher, who was 77 years old by the time the first movie was released. He felt like the films just didn't do the books justice, describing them by saying they gutted the books, making action films for 15 to 25-year-olds. He would even later sue the studio New Line Cinema for the Tolkien estate receiving no money from the movies whatsoever, though it was later settled out of court and he pursued no further action towards the Hobbit films. Honestly, although I've only read Fellowship and wasn't too keen on it, I think the movies do a great job bringing this world to the big screen. You can tell the sheer amount of effort and research Jackson put into this. The film opens on the Shire, home of the Hobbits, and he has brought this world to life flawlessly. It looks great and captures the fantasy feel so perfectly, you almost wish you could just walk around the Shire and meet all the hobbits. Jackson also uses perspective really well, having actors simply sitting behind each other to give off the illusion that one is bigger than the other. I'm a sucker for practical effects over CGI, and this just looks fantastic.
Before you came along, we Bagginses were very well thought of. Indeed. Never had any adventures or did anything unexpected.
Except that one time I got into numerous fights in the streets of London because West Ham might lose a football game. That was a weird time. You even like football now? Yeah, I do actually. We nearly won the Euro. Don't care. I also have to credit these movies for their casting. They have some of the most perfectly casted characters I have ever seen. Ah, somebody ordered a death scene. Ian Holm just comes across as such a friendly figure who you could almost imagine being your own fun uncle, who I actually find myself relating to quite a bit.
We don't want any more visitors, well-wishers, or distant relations. I've got to get away from these confounded relatives hanging on the bell all day, never giving me a moment's peace.
Am I Bilbo Baggins? Oh, so we're still socially inept in the future. Yeah, that never changes. Cool.
Old Toby, the finest weed in the South Valley.
Damn, Bilbo Baggins is a pothead. Gives these movies a whole new edge, really, doesn't it? But due to how friendly and kind-natured Bilbo comes across in the beginning, it makes his sudden change that more shocking and effective.
Meine Arbeit für richtig hältst. Ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
But when the ring starts to take over and Bilbo becomes more and more psychotic over it... Sorry, just the effects of working with Ridley Scott. It's such a change from his previous demeanour. It really sells just how dangerous this ring actually is, but it doesn't really sit well with his buddy Gandalf.
Do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks.
I am not Dumbledore! Gandalf is another character who goes through a similar change. At the beginning, he's this welcoming, warm, kind-hearted and friendly character. You can sense that him and Frodo are close, but then once he researches the origins of the ring, he becomes a dishevelled and neurotic mess. Again, selling the severity of the ring and its capabilities. People do mention the close-ups of this film, but this is really the only shot I think it just doesn't work in. I mean, I get it, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable because the danger is nearing, but it just seems out of place for the rest of the scene.
I just wanted to come in and try and get a bit of a close-up. I mean, you had one and Frodo had one and I've been in nothing but group shots so far.
No.
But I can't help but notice just how long Frodo takes to check out his uncle's house. So Bilbo vanishes from the party, he then goes home, Gandalf is already there somehow, they have a whole conversation about the ring, he hands it over, they say their goodbyes, then Gandalf sits around for a while contemplating why Richard Harris hated him so much, and then Frodo decides to check out the house. I mean, was he just walking around the woods aimlessly thinking, where could my Uncle Bilbo be? Well, he's not here. Well, he's not here. Maybe I should check out his house. He was probably busy bumming Sam. What is your problem with gay people? I mean, you realise in a few years that you like cock too. Weirdly, in the book, Gandalf gives Frodo the ring to hide and then goes off to research where it came from, and he's gone for 17 years. In the movie, it's cut down and no passage of time is actually given, but it is paced really well, and you can sense the impending danger as Gandalf begins to panic.
Cannot stay in the Shire.
No, it can't.
I never been to Earth, Dad. I never even slept over some other dude's house.
Frodo's cousins Merry and Pippin are hilarious, and I actually quote them far too often.
What about second breakfast?
And Gandalf acts like their disappointed father, always being made to clean up their mess, forcing them to do chores. In the book, Pippin throws a pebble down a well, which gives away their whereabouts, but in the movie he accidentally knocks down an entire damn skeleton. But I think it's so much funnier this way. I'll never get tired of Pippin being a screw-up, and at least here it was actually accidental.
I do not mention Frodo or the ring. And say nothing of Aragorn either. In fact, it's better if you don't speak at all about it too.
You can't even help but take a look at the evil crystal ball, which leads Sauron to believe he has the ring. He can't do anything right. All he had to do was not touch the damn ball. Not that one. But despite starting out as the comic relief, Merry and Pippin go through a huge transformation. They risk their lives to distract some orcs so Frodo can get away with the ring. Pippin literally sacrifices himself to save his friend Faramir from being burned alive. Despite his concerns, Gandalf challenges Pippin and gives him these tasks, and he does have heroic moments to prove himself. They show that anybody can become a hero in this franchise, even the most unlikely of hobbits. After Pippin is suspected of having the ring, he has to be relocated for his own safety, and it's a decent little side quest, and it is really emotional to see him and Merry being separated after all this time. And when they do reunite, it is equally as emotional. It's awesome to see Gandalf kick ass, and Pippin is even in there to get his own kill as well. It's a great transition from useless comic relief to underdog hero. Saruman, played by Christopher Lee, starts out as Gandalf's friend, but this doesn't last particularly long, which is quite interesting. Saruman is hardly in the first book, and even then he was only mentioned during Gandalf's backstory. But he's fleshed out here, and it's a unique touch as he suddenly switches and becomes evil, believing that the fight against Sauron is meaningless as they can't possibly win, so he decides to just join the dark side instead. It's unusual for a character change to happen as soon as they're introduced, especially when it's only 45 minutes into the movie, but I'm all for it. There's a lot of story to cover, and it doesn't dent the pacing one bit. Yeah, villain who turned evil for no reason. Did you have the film on mute? Maybe. Him and Gandalf then come to blows, and it's actually pretty cool, though it reminds me of the ending of Sword in the Stone. Though the spinning scene has always looked silly to me, and I just struggle to take this seriously. Honestly, these characters are all so strong and well written. Frodo is focused on the journey and doesn't want to let anyone down. He's the only one actually taking this journey seriously. Hell, the idiots actually light a damn campfire. You're supposed to be discreet. May as well write "We are here" in fireworks above the mountain.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
Sam is just hell-bent on protecting Frodo and making sure he succeeds, stopping him whenever he's about to put the ring on. Merry and Pippin tag along on the journey, but they don't know about the ring yet, so them chowing on magic mushrooms instead actually makes sense. But as the films progress, you really do sense their hearts of gold and true loyalty. They find out about the ring and agree to help without question. The tension is great in this, and since we're quite early into this adventure, so we know that Frodo is unlikely to die due to his connection with Bilbo and the ring, but the other three haven't been shown that much. It's really good suspense, as any of the others could possibly be killed off.
That fellow's done nothing but stare at you since we arrived.
Calm down, Sam. You can't even see the dude's eyes, you paranoid schizo. The first time Frodo wears the ring is such an iconic moment. It introduces the character of Aragorn, played by Viggo Mortensen, and is such a powerful moment anyway. We see the powers of the ring, we see how dangerous it can be if it's worn, and the reaction of those around him. Although they don't react when he reappears, which is a bit weird. The Nazgul look terrifying and have a really intimidating presence, but they seem to have no patience and are just incredibly lazy. So we get the fake out where they're about to kill the hobbits, but they've switched beds. Aragorn then tells their story to the others whilst watching them from a window, and because they spent 20 seconds looking for them, they just give up and go on home. Well, we tried. Who's on for a Netflix marathon? The musical score is fantastic. Howard Shore did a terrific job, and he builds the suspense and drama really well. The cinematography is astounding. You can easily see the influence this film had on cinema for the years that followed. This entire design of Isengard is spectacular, and clearly influenced Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Hellmouth just a few years later. Oh, look at me, I've got crane shots. Oh, look at the pretty images. Oh, Peter, should we maybe write a script? No, pretty images. What's the fucking movie? The character of Arwen is so badass. She gets introduced quite quickly, but her and Aragorn have been a couple for a while, so there's no need to waste any time initiating the relationship. Frodo is also dying at this point, so time is a major factor. But man, she takes out the entire Nazgul like Quentin Tarantino takes out anyone who dislikes his movies. It is a very sad scene as she believes that Frodo is dead and his destiny is over. Sauron wins. It means everything. The friendship between Sam and Frodo is built really well in the first film, and you can sense their closeness. In The Two Towers, Sam's loyalty to Frodo is evident from the very beginning. After travelling for so long, he's just past caring about anything else and turns into a savage. It is quite funny.
Let's just tie him up and leave him.
The second movie consists of Sam, Frodo and Gollum travelling together as friction continues to rise. Sam isn't sure they can trust him, which challenges his friendship with Frodo, but shows his loyalty towards him as he's constantly trying to protect him. Sam and Frodo are clearly gay lovers. Look at how they look at each other. You're clearly hiding something. You see sex in almost every scene. Gollum himself is also such an interesting character, and the effects look great, but I think what makes these three in the movie work so well is that overall, they're hardly in it. So when they do appear, you appreciate their scenes a whole lot more. It makes sense why Frodo was somewhat sympathetic towards Smeagol, because he knew what the ring was doing to his own uncle, and he feels like he now has a second chance to save someone else from its power. Sam even gives this great speech about how nothing will ever be the same again after all of this. These are tiny hobbits from such a small area, and they had no idea what they were getting involved in. And they go on to have a journey to save the world. It's incredible. Sam even gives Frodo his last bit of food. He is such a loyal friend, and they even acknowledge that there probably won't be a return trip. They're just there to save the world and possibly die doing it. Sam tries to convince Frodo that Gollum is evil, but he just doesn't listen. And this conflict wasn't actually in the book. It was added to cause a breakdown of their friendship, and it works really well. You feel so sorry for Sam and root for him to keep fighting. Now, as great as these films are, there are some really bad lines, and I get it to a degree. It's how people spoke back in the day. But sometimes they just don't sound genuine or natural at all, and no one else speaks like it. It's just randomly in the middle of a scene, and it doesn't quite work.
You don't see it, do you? He's a villain. Very nasty place. Full of enemies.
There's so much suspense as Smeagol constantly messes with Sam. It looks like he's about to attack Frodo, but then he doesn't and just acts like a child trying to pin his parents against each other. Ah, this looks like the most dangerous and comfiest cliff to sleep on. Gollum is actually so evil. He sabotages their final bits of food and frames Sam, and it's heartbreaking to see Frodo send his friend away. It's so sad and truly tests Sam's loyalty. And again, none of this was in the book. In the first movie, there's a flashback to Agent Smith in Mount Doom, but this has always annoyed me.
Destroy it!
You're not gonna stop him? He's kind of holding the ring that could cause the apocalypse. Tackle him and throw his ass into the volcano with it. Who cares? The fate of the world is at stake. He just lets him walk away. The motivations of the characters are all well paced. Boromir, played by Sean Bean, wants to attempt to use the ring for good, while the others believe that it's impossible, causing a debate. The main premise is about these races all coming together as one. Bit hypocritical though, the movie clearly portrays hobbits as the superior race. When do they ever show that the hobbits are Did you watch the film? Boromir is another character with a great arc. He's constantly tempted by the ring, and it always keeps you guessing on what side he's actually on. I mean, at first he wants the ring to use it for good, so all of his scenes where he tries to take it from Frodo, you don't know if it's him genuinely wanting it for good, or if the ring is manipulating his mind to steal it for evil. It's actually very cleverly written. In the extended cut, however, Boromir's father Denethor actually convinces him to try to steal the ring, which I'm really not a fan of. It just takes away what I found to be the most interesting part of his whole character. But to fulfill Boromir's arc completely, he shows up to fight and redeem himself, but nobody is surprised that Sean Bean dies. But man, talk about taking death like a champion. How many times does he need to be shot to die? I love the character of Frodo. He's just this little hobbit with no prospects or anything, but thanks to his uncle being a nosy little bastard, he has to clean up his mess and is now on a life-endangering journey that he really isn't prepared for. He's just thrown into this, not really being comfortable with it at all. And here, Gimli wants to head through some mines, but Gandalf really doesn't want to. We assume beforehand that Gandalf is in charge, but he actually lets Frodo make the decision, solidifying him as the hero and the chosen one. It's an interesting change from the book. In the novel, Gandalf actually suggests they go through the mines, but the others don't like the idea. But they are then chased by wolves, so they have no choice but to go there. It's a solid change to make Frodo a lot more integral to the story. It's his decision that leads to the most heartbreaking moment of the entire film. Gandalf's death is truly devastating. If you hadn't read the books or had no knowledge of him returning, it's such a tragic moment. Gandalf was Frodo's only guidance, his only authority figure, and now he's gone, and it's because of the direction Frodo told him to go, so he's going to blame himself. But because of their journey, they can't even stop to mourn and take in what just happened. They have no choice but to suck it up, get over it, and keep moving, making the heartbreak that much more tragic. Frodo struggles to come to terms with it, but is told that someone as small as him can effectively change the world. He's given a vision of what will happen if he fails, so it's a good thing there's no pressure. When Boromir persists and demands the ring from Frodo, he even becomes vulnerable straight after he fails. But because of this, Frodo no longer knows who he can trust, which adds to his destroyed confidence and psyche even more. I'm really not a fan of Legolas, played by Orlando Bloom. I'm not particularly keen on the actor anyway, as he seems to only have one face, but the character is an elf and he is absolutely perfect at everything. I watched all 3 films as carefully as I could, and not once does he ever get hit with anything. He never slips, he never falls, he never gets knocked down. He hits every single arrow and overcomes absolutely everything with no worry at all. I mean, he even takes on an entire troll by himself. Okay, it takes all of them to kill it, but still. He gets a perfect shot in hell from a mile away. Even Superman would have been a little off with that shot.
Got knuckles for 8.
I mean, they might as well just send Legolas, that's all they need. I mean, Aragorn takes on loads of orcs on his own, but at least it looks like he's struggling. Legolas would do all of this blindfolded with one arm tied behind his back without breaking a sweat, whilst drunk. I just find it so difficult to buy the tension and suspense anytime Legolas is in danger. They're fine. Let's be honest, they're fine. He's the Middle-earth Jesus. I mean, I guess Jesus was far from fine, but shut up. Still an atheist. Cool. He hits every single arrow. Just miss one. That's all I ask. Just one. Or slip over. Have a bird poop on your head. I don't know. Any kind of misfortune. He even steals Gimli's kill, for crying out loud. Legolas even skateboards and still hits every single target. Just miss one. He takes down an entire elephant on his own and still has time to pose. I mean, don't get me wrong. It looks cool as hell, but what good is a character who never has any struggles or conflicts? I mean, I guess he briefly struggles whilst holding onto the elephant. That's the best I got. Frodo nearly dies 3 times in the first movie, and this kind of character is much more human and interesting, as opposed to one who just overcomes everything without a care in the world. What about the racist orcs? Lord of the Rings isn't racist! What are you even on? Well, they're clearly portraying black people as ugly, disgusting orcs. I mean, in the books, they refer to them as Mongol types. Well, I mean, that just means the book might have been a little bit racist, not the movie. I mean, I'm just saying. The only one racist in the film is Gimli.
I will be dead before I see the ring in the hands of an elf!
Gimli has such a strong arc throughout the 3 films, and I love it. Gimli starts out not liking elves. The others don't take the hobbits too seriously at first, but this all changes throughout the trilogy as they all learn that it doesn't matter where you come from. We're all the same. It's a terrific message and well ahead of its time for a book series written during the Second World War. Gimli even risks his life to save Aragorn. It shows his growth as a character throughout the film, starting out by hating other races and now risking his life for them.
Toss me. What? I cannot jump the distance, you'll have to toss me.
That means something very different in the UK. I wouldn't really use that word, dude. There's this uber orc called Lurtz who is quite badass, even pulling himself further onto a sword after being stabbed, but then is decapitated for his troubles. He doesn't get much screen time, but it's to be expected for a generic big bad troll man. And credit to this film, they kill off 2 main characters in the first movie and both are super emotional. I mean Boromir and Gandalf, not Lurtz. You really feel that Frodo is a broken man at the end of the first movie. He's already gone through hell and we're only 1 film in. His uncle has gone away, he's lost Gandalf who was like a grandfather to him and he feels like he caused his death. Boromir wanted to use the ring for good and he dies and it's all down to him. Frodo is protecting the ring so he naturally feels accountable for any deaths that come from this adventure. He isn't even sure he can trust Sam but reluctantly agrees to let him continue with them anyway. Because the original plan was for the Two Towers to actually be the 3rd and final film of the trilogy, it proved the hardest to write, as some of it was wrapping up the Fellowship of the Ring and they didn't know how to begin or end the movie, as there wasn't a clear focus. Boromir's death was actually in the beginning of the Two Towers book, but was moved to the end of the Fellowship movie instead. The book also ended with the group going to Isengard and Frodo meeting the giant spider, but this was all saved for the 3rd movie. Why does the giant spider want to fuck Frodo? Why do you see sex with everything? I mean, it's just there. Don't you think it clearly looks like Gandalf is butt-fucking Pippin? No! No! In the Two Towers film, the King of Rohan, Theoden, played by Bernard Hill, is possessed by Saruman. But in the book, he was just depressed and emotionally manipulated by Wormtongue. One thing I really don't like about this movie is that it opens by showing what happened to Gandalf after he fell down into the abyss. Now, I'm all for a recap, but this just ruins the illusion for me and kind of spoils the surprise return later in the film. They constantly refer to a white wizard and a group of Ents, giant living trees, take in Merry and Pippin and seemingly are surrendering them to this wizard. They and the audience initially assume it's Saruman, but surprise, it's actually Gandalf who is now back from the dead. I just think this shock was ruined by showing that scene at the beginning of the film. The fight with the Balrog looks cool and everything, but I would have just cut this out, or at least saved it for later when Gandalf explained what happened to him.
Gandalf! What is it, Mr. Frodo?
Gandalf! Idiot. The fact that this is a fantasy story could entice people to watch it with their children, which I'd encourage, but only if they aren't a damn pussy. The imagery is so dark, the orcs are so grotesque and vicious looking. And later on we see disembodied heads under some water. Frodo falls in and the imagery is quite scary and really captures your attention. Some of the voice acting is also kind of off.
We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meat?
But man, Aragorn recaps all of Merry and Pippin's movements just from tracks in the dirt. He's a better detective than Batman.
There are dead things. Dead faces in the water.
Oh hey, you're right!
This forest is old. Very old. Full of memory. And anger.
Star Wars fans? I thought it was cool to like Star Wars. Does it change? But I really think Saruman needs to hire better work. No wonder Middle-earth is in such a state when minimum wage is going towards guards like this. They are right there when Frodo throws his cloak over them to hide as a rock and suddenly they become John Cena.
No parent should have to bury their child.
Well, the McCanns did. I knew it! This is the film where Aragorn begins to foreshadow his future acts as king. Even before he gets crowned, he realises that Theoden is being an idiot and tries to convince him to do what's right. Gollum's split personalities is done perfectly. He's evil and creepy, and yet also manages to come across as quite sympathetic as well.
And the dwarfs just spring out of holes in the ground.
Okay, that was such a fake laugh to his joke. That was such an obvious pity laugh, and trust me, I know a pity laugh when I hear one. So Aragorn falls off a cliff in one scene and is presumed dead, but this wasn't actually in the book, and it's a change I don't really get. Peter Jackson claimed he put it in to create tension, but not a lot of time goes by before he returns anyway. And this trilogy already has a bunch of fake out deaths, so just a personal preference, this one didn't really seem needed. In the extended cuts there are more scenes where he's presumed dead. They do show how big a deal it is and show that he's needed as king, so it's not entirely pointless, but I feel like this could have been achieved by having him be mortally wounded instead. And also, how the hell did he even survive this drop to begin with? Wouldn't he have died on impact once hitting the water? But Aragorn shows how strong a hero he is by taking charge as a battle begins at Helm's Deep. The third act of The Two Towers is tremendous. They are so close to Mordor, but then the battle at Helm's Deep happens and you can tell that this means everything. It is all or nothing now. The build-up is spectacular and absolutely nothing can ruin it.
Could have picked a better spot.
Okay, that was funny. To be fair, I wasn't really a big fan of Gimli at first, but he does grow on me.
Thunder coming! Come on! Certainty of death? Small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
And he really gets you psyched for the big third act there. He's just short and annoying. And probably gay. The battle scene is incredible. It is flawless. I can't find a single problem with it. It looks perfect. The battle is such an incredible spectacle. Look at it. The sheer production design is fantastic. You know what? These movies are amazing.
Is this it? Is this all you can conjure, Saruman?
I am so going to die. Ha ha ha.
We must weather such things as we have always done.
How can that be your decision?
That's such a weird take. It doesn't even match the rest of the scene. The angle looks off, the delivery is weird. It's just a very weird take to go with. Even when side characters are in peril and could be dying, it still means everything. This is a trilogy with so many characters, and yet if any of them are close to death, you care so much. That says a lot about Peter Jackson's directing and writing, as well as the cast's amazing acting performances. In the book, the Ents actually agreed to joining the war without any need for convincing, but in the movie they refuse to help until Merry and Pippin show them what Saruman did to all of the trees. Yep, damaging the ecosystem is exactly what brings on a war in Middle-earth. But I do like this addition. This was done to show that Merry and Pippin weren't just an inconvenience. They weren't just being babysat during the second film, and they were actually contributing to the fight against evil, even if it wasn't physically yet. Sam and Frodo get taken hostage by Boromir's brother Faramir, who understandably doesn't trust them after his brother's death, which is decent enough motivation, but it was quite different in the book. In the novel, Faramir did this, but he sensed the ring's power pretty early on and let them go, whereas here, it takes him quite a while. Here, he wants the ring to go to his father. A subplot is that Boromir was the child prodigy, and Faramir wanted to grant him the ring for approval. And you root for this, you root for Faramir to gain his approval, you get so much sympathy for the guy.
What can men do against such reckless hate?
Make a 9-hour live stream about it. 9 hours? Like anyone would watch that. But man, I get goosebumps when the cavalry shows up. This is phenomenal. The Ents get involved and this whole thing is extraordinary.
What are you doing?
Auditioning for my role in Sin City. And the film ends with Gollum, who for most of the movie has remained more sympathetic and calm, turning far more sinister at the end for an excellent cliffhanger leading into the next film. Despite being the third and final installment to the trilogy, Peter Jackson actually considered Return of the King to be the easiest one to make, as it was the climax for the whole story. Despite being the longest of the 3 films, it actually cut out the most from the source material. Some events depicted in the film were actually in the second book, continuing Jackson's storytelling style of altering the timeline. We get a decent origin story of Smeagol, which is a solid opener and works as a cool continuation of the last film's cliffhanger. Let go? Man, he really wants that fish. It shows that Smeagol was manipulated into killing his own cousin for the ring. It helps us dive into his psyche even more, but also connects back to Sam and Frodo, as we now know that Gollum has killed a hobbit before, and they may even remind him of his own cousin, which is why he's so psychotic around them. In a weird way, it actually makes Gollum's character even more sympathetic. Sure, he killed his cousin, but it was due to the ring. But what makes it more interesting is we don't really know if it was his own greediness or if it was genuinely the ring's power corrupting him. The most controversial change is that in the theatrical cut, we don't actually see Saruman's death. Yeah, he's the villain being built up for over 6 hours, and in this cut they just say,
"There's a wizard to manage here, locked in his tower."
And we never see him again. In the extended cut, he's attacked and brutally impaled, and it makes no sense to have cut that scene out completely. Christopher Lee was infuriated by this decision and held it against Peter Jackson for years, and I feel like it's completely warranted. It's such a dumb move.
Something stirs in the east. A sleepless malice.
An obvious green screen. I think the pacing is done really well. The previous films had Aragorn be smitten with Arwen, but suddenly she vanishes and he seems to be interested in another woman. On first viewing, you wonder what the hell happened to Arwen, but now we get a flashback to explain it. Things like this were helped by the fact that the trilogy was all filmed simultaneously, preventing plot holes or inconsistencies. The Arwen thing isn't really explained very well in the theatrical cut, and this was down to scenes being cut out. But basically, she chose to become human to be with Aragorn and had to leave, and due to this decision, she is now dying. In the theatrical cut, it's just very vague. But she urges her father to reforge the mighty sword for the big battle, which is truly an epic moment. But hey, credit to Lord of the Rings for inspiring every single superhero movie in existence with a damn laser in the sky. To be fair, a battle starts quite early on in the film, which is an awesome way to kickstart the beginning of the end. It really is a heartwarming moment when Gandalf and Pippin find out that Sam and Frodo are still alive. The group spends so much of this trilogy separated, so you want them so desperately to reunite. And it adds to their isolation. Sam and Frodo have no idea where the others are. Gandalf is dead, and so could Merry and Pippin be for all they know. So literally, they have nothing to live for. They are here to save the world, and that's it. They don't care what happens to them. There's a really emotional moment as Pippin sings a song as everyone prepares for battle. It's a nice little interlude to separate the scenes from the big action we're about to see.
Have you learned nothing of the stubbornness of dwarves?
You might as well accept it. We're going with you, laddie.
We're all gonna leave all these innocent people to struggle without us. You really feel for Merry. He wants to fight and just do his bit, but nobody takes him seriously and wants to ride with him until Eowyn obliges. The battle is hyped up so well as Aragorn asks all these dead fellas to help them out.
The line has ended!
I mean, it hasn't. You could still go out and have another kid. I'm just saying.
It's sticky. What is it?
Hobbits is come! There's a scene that definitely should have been cut. After Frodo sends Sam away, he goes back down the stairs and finds the food that Gollum discarded. This scene is entirely pointless. The audience clearly see Gollum getting rid of the food earlier, and Sam knows it wasn't him, so there's no need for this big reveal. Furthermore, it goes against Sam's entire character to just give up when Frodo sends him away. He would have stuck around and followed him no matter what. He wouldn't have gone back down the stairs. But thirdly, he shows up later to save Frodo anyway, so this scene ruins that surprise as we know he's coming back. It's just stupid. You can tell visually how much impact this ring has had on Frodo's mental state. He's a complete mess. But then Gollum shows up. How did he survive that fall? What is it with characters in these films surviving the impossible? There is a nice moment where Frodo is actually about to give up, but gets a vision morale boost. But then the spider shows up anyway. It's so tragic because of just how close he is to Mount Doom at this point. But oh, what a surprise, Sam is back. As explained, this conflict wasn't actually in the book. So in the novel, Sam and Frodo entered the spider's lair together. Frodo was also beaten a lot more by the orcs, but this conflict works a lot better in the film, and benefits Frodo's heroism and friendship with Sam perfectly. The thing is, Sam believes Frodo is dead, and honestly, you kind of believe it at this point. Frodo's been close to dead so many times before this, but after this huge epic journey, you actually kind of believe he could die and that maybe Sam will take the ring the rest of the way for him. It's such an emotional moment.
Right now! Right now!
We can't. You're in the way, mate. This is what's great about the trilogy. Everything has come full circle. The journey, the characters, the battles, they all mean so much and it's fantastic. Okay, this shot is really bad. It's so out of place with the rest of the scene. It looks like it was accidentally put in. Just a randomly, poorly focused slow-mo shot. For a trilogy that is otherwise really well produced and directed, it's weird that this made it in there. But when the ghosts join the battle, it looks awesome.
No man can kill me.
I am no man.
A great line in 2003, a genuine clarification in 2023. What? What's going on in the future? Wish he didn't scream straight after though, kinda kills the moment.
They've taken it. Sam, they took the ring.
Don't know why, I told them the Japanese version is better, but they wouldn't listen. But Sam had the ring the whole time. In the book, this was actually told to the reader early on, so there was no big reveal. So I'm starting to believe that Tolkien just didn't understand suspenseful tension. Frodo collapses just outside of Mount Doom, and you can tell the impact it's had on him. Sam even carries him up there, and it's such an emotional moment and really solidifies the strength of their friendship. In the book, when Sam had the ring, it also took its toll on him, but that was cut out of the film to focus on his determination to protect Frodo instead. His well-being is all that's on his mind, and I think it works a lot better. This is also intercut with Gimli finally letting go of his racism and accepting Legolas as a friend. It's a great message about friendship. We should make another trilogy about Bilbo.
For Frodo.
Okay, I must admit, that does give me goosebumps. But this Mount Doom scene is incredible. It is so worth the 9-hour wait, man.
What are you waiting for?
The Goonies 2! In the book, Gollum accidentally slips into the volcano, but it was changed, and they were going to have Frodo shove him in. But that made him look more like a psycho murderer, so instead they had it become somewhat accidental. Which is a cliche, but it does fit the story better. It's such an epic moment, but how the hell does Frodo still have the strength to hold onto the edge of the cliff? There is a subtle moment where he even looks down, and after everything he's been through, he possibly considers suicide. It's quite a dark moment for such a fun trilogy, but Sam even acknowledges it.
Don't you let go.
This is a lot deeper than I remembered. They succeed, the towers collapse, and you can see the true pride and emotion in Gandalf's eyes. At certain points throughout the trilogy, he doubts that Sam and Frodo can actually put it off, but he's seen that they've done it, and even outdone his expectations. It's beautifully handled. It's cool to see them all become reunited again, but maybe it's just me. Frodo doesn't seem that surprised to see Gandalf alive again. I mean, bear in mind that he died in Fellowship and Frodo has had no knowledge of him being back until now. I don't know, I just expected a bigger reaction. This is when the fake out endings begin that everyone's made fun of, but I checked and they last 15 minutes, so honestly, it's not that big of an issue. The movie just never seems to end. They just pad it out and walk around for no reason. The pacing is so bad. I swear to God, if you say no reason one more time. How many endings do they need? Just fade to black over and over again. It takes forever. It's not Peter Jackson's fault you got the attention span of a fucking fish. They had a lot to wrap up, and the book had even more. Yeah, this film actually cuts down on the endings, funnily enough. It's cool to see Aragorn become king, but he doesn't change who he is. He remains humble, tells his friends they don't need to bow to him, and he and everyone else actually bows to them. It's a great message, but you can see that Frodo is really uncomfortable with all of this. It continues in a bar where everyone around them is just having drinks like nothing happened, but their lives will never be the same again. Then Sam meets a random woman, chats her up, and marries her. Where the hell did this come from? The point was that Frodo can't just go back and live his life, whereas Sam could, but I feel like this could have been achieved in other ways. Sam goes back and just hangs out with Merry and Pippin like normal, or even have the movie end with him flirting with someone getting over his previous anxiety. There's no need to rush out an entire marriage and children in 5 minutes. It's such an epic journey, so you get where Frodo is coming from. He's a ruined man and feels completely lost. The farewells on the ship would have been the perfect ending. None of it dragged, it wrapped everything up perfectly. This was great. But no, we gotta have Sam and his stupid wife and his stupid kids. This should have been cut.
I'm back.
Sam, your kids are like 5, mate. You've been back for a while. This line makes no sense. One other thing these films get flack for is being too long, which is weird considering some of the most beloved movies in history were way longer. With credits, the first 2 movies' theatrical cuts clock in at just under the 3-hour mark. and I don't think they even drag. There's never a moment where they linger on a sequence for a bit too long or they outstay their welcome. But Return of the King crosses that mark. Without credits, it's just over 3 hours. If you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that I have a 3-hour rule. I have never seen a movie that is over 3 hours and is warranted to be over 3 hours. Even Titanic, which is one of my favourite movies of all time, shouldn't be the length it is. So, is Return of the King worthy of being over 3 hours? Let's make some edits that I would want to make and see how we go. All the stuff with Sam's wife can go, it's unneeded. The bar scene, the wedding, the ending, cut all of that crap out. Sam discovering the bread and ruining the surprise, that's all gone too. And... yeah, it's under 3 hours, didn't need to be. Although we should put Saruman's death back in, because that kind of needs to be in there, so if we do that then... Oh! No! Well, there you have it. Return of the King is the first movie I've seen that warrants being over 3 hours. The trilogy is a masterpiece. Definitely one of the greatest ever made. The fact that they were all made at the same time as one another really helped the pacing and story majorly. It's a phenomenal trilogy and I would recommend it to any fan of fantasy. Okay, Dave, you can take me back now. Dave? It's 2017. I don't have Dave's phone number. Dave? Stuck in 2017. Okay. Nearly just died on camera.